It turns out the great video game voice actor strike is finally over. Yeah, that thing. The official SAG-AFTRA strike, the one that got dragged on longer than some people's entire gacha content creation careers. It is done, settled, wrapped, signed, and filed away like a group project you forgot was due. And you would think that would be the end of it. Time to move on. Lessons learned. Everybody shakes their hands and logs off. But no, apparently, this has only made certain voice actors even more mad. You know the ones. The same handful who took this entire thing and turned it into a public performance about industry reform. While low-key farming Twitter clout, they are reportedly seething. And not like the low-level simmering, we are talking full boil. Why? Because after all the posturing, all the grandstanding, the spicy callouts, it kind of didn't go anywhere. Not only did the movement fail to change the system, it kind of torched their own reputations on the way out. And that is not just internet drama, we are talking real career damage here. People now look at the English voice acting scene and see a circus, which sucks, because there are good people in the industry. But when your loudest voices spend a year cosplaying as labor revolutionaries without actually being part of the revolution, yeah, that is how you get clowned. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the so-called Genshin strike. You see, the real strike started in July 2024. SAG-AFTRA stepped up to demand better pay and protection from AI voice cloning. That is the union. That is the legit movement. It makes sense. No one wants to be replaced by a Siri with emotional range. But somewhere along the way, a side group, mostly freelancers tied to Genshin, Hoyoverse games, and a few other titles, decided they were gonna launch their own strike. Except, they weren't officially part of SAG-AFTRA. They weren't even bound by the strike terms. It was more like a loud, awkward boycott masquerading as labor solidarity. They dressed it up in all the right buzzwords. AI threat, standing with workers, no choice. But once people started digging into the details, it turns out a lot of that was just straight up bullshit. Like, this wasn't a union-backed action. It wasn't organized. There were no negotiations. It was just people piggybacking off the optics of a real strike to push their own narratives. And the worst part, that confusion worked, at least for a little while. They blurred the line between official strike and personal protest so effectively that even fans didn't know what was real anymore. The whole thing became this weird PR theater, with the audience stuck figuring out whether they're watching a serious labor movement or a poorly written side quest. So around March, the voice actor for Keqing finally got replaced, which, I mean, yeah, that is what happens when you don't show up to work for 6 months. Studios still gotta hit their deadlines. Players still expect new content. Nobody's gonna pause a game patch just to accommodate to your personal protest. And then enter Jacob Takanashi, a non-union Japanese VA. And here's the twist, he actually did the job. There is no drama, at least not from his part. He just delivered the lines. Wild concept, right? Except apparently, that was enough to kick off a full-blown meltdown. Jacob got absolutely dogpiled by his colleagues, and I use that word really loosely because this wasn't an industry critique. It was a full-blown character assassination. He got called a scab, a clout chaser, like he's some kind of villain for accepting freelance work. And yeah, some of that came from recognizable names. Someone like Kayli Mills, who went on a rampage crashing out on Twitter, which is just cartoonishly dramatic. Other VAs were talking blacklist, gatekeeping future jobs, and I don't know who needs to hear this, but if your moral crusade involves bullying a guy just trying to pay rent, you have already lost the plot. The most generous interpretation here is that people got emotionally attached to a cause and lashed out at the nearest available scapegoat. How about the less generous read? They were just pissed someone else took a job they thought they could gatekeep forever. And that is when the whole facade really started to fall apart. Because once people saw how Jacob was being treated, something clicked. Like, wait a second, who are the bad guys here? Suddenly, the tone shifted. The sympathy that was barely holding together snapped. The strike stopped looking like activism and started reading like Mean Girls with microphones. And then came in Corina.
Oh my goodness!
And if you thought the optics were bad before, she somehow made it worse. Corina Boettger, Paimon's VA, started just saying the quiet part out loud. First, she kinda slipped and admitted that AI protection wasn't even the real issue. All that talk about ethics and future-proofing? Yeah. Turns out, the main goal was to get more companies signed with SAG-AFTRA. And if you don't understand what that means, it means more contracts, more money, more control. Happy! She even called YouTubers stupid and said the players were too dumb to understand labor politics. Just straight up said it. No filter and I don't know. Maybe save that energy for your group chats. Because nothing says, we are the good guys, like insulting the people whose support you desperately need. That video alone shattered whatever was left in the illusion. Suddenly, it wasn't about protecting art or fighting automation. It was about leverage, money, union reach. And instead of owning that, they tried to hide it under layers of moral grandstanding. But once the curtain got pulled back, all that was left was a mess of entitlement and very public egos. And just when you thought the script couldn't flip any harder, Joe showed up. Now for those unfamiliar, Joe is an actual working VA with union experience, a decent resume, and more importantly, no interest in playing Twitter cosplay revolutionary. He put out a video that honestly felt like the adult walking into a room full of toddlers. He basically confirmed what everyone was already suspecting. 1. The AI stuff already covered. Existing union contracts already had language in place about synthetic voice use. So the "we are protecting the future" angle? Yeah, that was a nothing burger. Just a big scary buzzword to dress up a labor negotiation. 2. This wasn't even an official strike. The people refusing to work for Genshin weren't part of the broader legitimate SAG-AFTRA video game strike. They were doing their own thing. Basically a voluntary boycott they tried to rebrand as some righteous act of solidarity. And 3, this is the big one, Joe flat out said that part of the reason they framed it like an official strike was to pressure other VAs into joining them, like psychologically cornering people into quitting their jobs, hoping that enough bodies on the floor would force Hoyoverse to cave, which, spoiler alert, they didn't. Hoyoverse didn't even blink, they just recasted them and moved on. The boycott was loud online, but operationally, it was a speed bump. So what started as a dramatic call to action ended up looking more like a glorified group project, where half of the group went rogue and failed the assignment and then blamed the professor. And what gets lost in all of this is that they don't represent every voice actor. I mean, far from it. They're just the loud minority. There are plenty of VAs, quiet working professionals, who just want to do their jobs, who aren't terminally online, who aren't trying to weaponize a boycott for clout. And some of those folks, they've been caught in the crossfire, like the VA for Venti. From what has been reported, she wanted to keep working, but apparently SAG-AFTRA was sending her threatening letters to fall in line. Imagine that. You are trying to honor your commitments to a role you care about, and your own union's leaning on you like you're the villain for not quitting. So yeah, not everyone was on board with this collective refusal, and the fallout from this whole situation isn't just memes and drama threads. It is a fractured community where some people got silenced just for trying to work. But one day out of the blue, Mugen drops the receipts. Not a vague trust me bro situation, but actual leaked DMs from what is allegedly the negotiation committee running this whole circus. And honestly, it was like peeling back the drywall and finding black mold behind the wall. First off, the arrogance. These people really believe that they're the main characters, messaging each other about how they were in control, how they would rather drag this out longer, and how the end of the strike was too soon because not enough damage had been done. Literal quotes that sound like actual evil people. They didn't just want leverage, they wanted pain.
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
Other VAs losing work, other actors getting recast, collateral damage. Because when you're convinced your ideology is noble, everyone else becomes expendable. And then comes the blacklisting talk. Yeah, you heard that right. These people who claim to be fighting for fairness were openly discussing creating a do not hire list, a full-on blacklist of non-union actors they would quietly circulate to studios, which, by the way, is completely illegal under the labor law. But sure, tell me more about fairness and solidarity while you are secretly organizing a blacklist. Now, you would think that after these DMs got leaked, they would issue some kind of statement or at least try to explain. Nah, they went for the crybaby speedrun. They tried to mass report Mugen's video for privacy violations because apparently screenshots of people planning to blacklist others are a violation of their privacy. Right, like Mugen hacked the Pentagon instead of reading your Discord meltdowns. They really tried to make the you exposed my bad behavior" sound like a human rights issue. So now the dust has settled, right? The strike is over, and what did they gain? Nothing. No massive changes, no sweeping union mandates, no "we did it internet" moment. They threw tantrums online for a year, pressured fellow voice actors into quitting their jobs, harassed newcomers, and created enough bad PR to make the entire English VA scene look like it's run by children with Twitter accounts. And now they're acting like this was the plan all along. Sure, just like the Titanic was supposed to be a submarine, am I right? The damage though, it was very real. Studios now see the English voice acting community as unstable, risky. Why bother hiring Western VAs if it means stepping into a minefield of social media threats, strikes that aren't strikes, and group chats plotting the blacklist? And right on cue, Kayli Mills returned to the spotlight to somehow make things worse. She got community noted for enabling drama tubers and making people unsafe, which is hilarious considering she was one of the loudest voices attacking Jacob Takanashi earlier in the year. This is the same guy who publicly mocked Jacob Takanashi's finances, insinuating that he wasn't the breadwinner breadwinner and that his wife pays the bills. Because apparently, when your career is built on moral superiority, personal jabs at someone's household income are fair game. And finally, when Mugen dropped all this, some VAs tried to go after him by saying he is not even a journalist, as if the only people allowed to comment on public controversies are corporate mouthpieces with journalism degrees. It's that classic move, gatekeeping basic observation. You don't need a press badge to point out that the house is on fire. So ding dong, welcome to the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Guess who is confirmed to be out? It is official. Both Corina Boettger and Kayli Mills are gone. Like officially, like not a drill. The Genshin Impact version 5.7 update has confirmed the recasting in their Hoyo lab post, with Paimon's new voice already embedded in the pre-download files and Keqing's new voice line set to roll out, marking a definitive shift by Hoyoverse. That is not some Reddit cope or a blurry audio guesswork. It's in the files. It is done. It is cooked. They're cooked. And the response? People are celebrating, like full-on fireworks level celebration. Even folks who once claimed to like Paimon's voice were doing a little jig on the sidewalk. Comments under the leaks were literally clowning on these VAs. I mean, harsh, right? But this community has had months of pent-up energy from Corina's Twitter rants, outbursts, and her whole "you are too dumb to understand unions." So yeah, it exploded. So now let's talk about how Corina left. According to her, she stepped away, totally voluntarily. Nothing weird going on here, folks, except something kind of breaks that whole story. You see, the new Paimon voice lines were ready 16 days after Corina announced her departure, which that is not how game dev works. You don't recast the main narrator, record all her new lines, go through the QA, and shove it into the client in just 2 weeks. You just don't. That means Hoyo had already fired her way before her post dropped, probably around the same time Kanich got swapped, which was, guess what, about 2.5 months earlier. So her little exit post, that was PR spin, a last-ditch effort to make herself look noble instead of, well, fired. And honestly, that tracks. Because remember, this is someone who has been caught twisting the truth multiple times. She has got a pattern of saying whatever makes her look like a victim, even while launching unprovoked shots at players, YouTubers, and her own colleagues. Her announcement wasn't closure, it was virtue signaling. A final, "I am not a scab, I left on my own terms" attempt at damage control, even though she was still working during the boycott. Can't have it both ways, but here we are. Oh, and she couldn't resist tossing one last grenade on the way out, claiming Hoyoverse was late on payments, even though Hoyoverse reportedly helped her out with those exact payment issues before. They even hooked her up with a new agency. And her response to all that? Publicly dragging them after getting canned. Peak professionalism. And at that point, it doesn't feel like advocacy. It feels like retaliation. Just pure ego-driven salt. And what we're seeing over and over again is this same cycle. Loud voices acting recklessly, getting called out, and then spinning into some kind of moral crusade. Like their only mistake was just caring too much. But really, it is just a lack of accountability. A group of people who weaponized outrage until it turned back on them. And now they're surprised they got burned. Now let's talk about the Keqing side of this. The leaks listed the old VA as Kayli Mills and the new one as anonymous. And no, that doesn't mean she was replaced by AI, calm down. It just means her new VA doesn't want her name public. And honestly, can you blame her? Imagine stepping into this role just trying to do your job and instantly getting dogpiled by a bunch of terminally online union loyalists screaming about betrayal. Not to mention the clique trying to blacklist anyone who dares fill their old seat. Yeah, no thanks. Staying anonymous is a smart move. Not dramatic, not secretive, just self-preservation. And what this tells us is this is real. This is not just another maybe. Keqing's VA wasn't unavailable, she has been replaced. And her replacement already knows how toxic the fallout can be, which says everything. Now, a lot of people originally doubted that Paimon would ever get recast. I mean, she is Paimon. She talks more than the Traveler. Some people joke that she is the Traveler. She is at 90% of the game's dialogue. But here's the thing, recasting doesn't mean retroactively re-recording everything. Most studios don't go back and Frankenstein the whole script. They just bring in a new voice for future lines moving forward. So if you're worried about tonal whiplash, yeah, it'll happen. But also, who cares? You will get used to it anyway. What matters more is what this signals. Because if Hoyoverse is comfortable replacing Paimon, the literal mascot of the franchise, then nobody is untouchable. No one is safe. This is the voice of Genshin, like narratively embedded. If they're pulling the trigger on her, everyone's job just became provisional. It doesn't matter if you're fan favorite, it doesn't matter how iconic you think your voice lines are. If you make enough noise and enough people want you gone, Hoyo clearly has no problem replacing you. And some people are already taking guesses on who's next. Sukuro's VA has been, let's say, unfiltered. She has lashed out at fans, starting fights on social media and generally treating her platform like a personal venting diary. And then there's Candice VA, who by the way went on on a 4-page unhinged monologue on Blue Sky, calling people names, dragging the community, and literally writing F Hoyoverse in plain English. She even suggested that maybe Hoyoverse should just recast her. And hey, sometimes you get what you wish for. So if a new VA pops up for the older characters, yeah, we have seen that movie before. We have played these games before. Now some actual good news. Yes, we did get a W in all of this. Zach Aguilar and Sarah Miller, aka Aether and Lumine, are both confirmed to be returning. Zach even posted a very respectful thank you to Hoyoverse and their team. No drama, no vague posting, just professionalism. Weird how rare that feels right now. And yes, the voice of Venti is reportedly returning as well. This is the same Erica who spoke out against the Union clique, and let's be honest, probably had more backbone than most of the others combined. And you know what? Good. Let the people who didn't burn every bridge come back. Let the ones who actually cared about working keep working. So there's the part where I would normally say hopefully lessons were learned, but I think we all know better. The people who tried to bully the industry into submission, smeared their co-workers, lied to the public, and then pulled the identity card when they got called out, they will never admit they messed up. They will go right back into vague posting, right back into playing victim, and right back into convincing themselves that everyone else is the problem. But the rest of the industry isn't waiting for them. Hoyoverse is moving on. Fans are moving on. Studios are looking for talent that wants to work. And if you're someone who just wants to hear your favorite characters again without walking into another social media war zone, you are probably feeling a little relieved right now. Because at the end of the day, people don't want drama. They just want to hear their characters getting voice acted. But that is all from me, Glaivekiyo, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!